Laura Parker had always been the kind of woman who found peace in small routines, like folding laundry or watering her plants on Sunday mornings. The house was quiet that day, too quiet. The silence made her notice the ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of her own heartbeat. Her only son, Ethan, had gone back to college 2 weeks ago, and though she told herself she was fine, the stillness felt heavy, like an echo she couldn't silence. She had gone into Ethan's room just to tidy up, maybe fold the clothes he left behind, maybe feel a little closer to him. His room still smelled faintly of his cologne and clean cotton. There were open books on the desk, an old guitar leaning against the wall, and a few crumpled notes he'd left behind. She smiled, remembering how he used to complain about her cleaning, saying she always moved his things, that she missed even that. She gathered his jeans from the chair, shook her head at how messy he was, and began checking the pockets before tossing them in the wash. That was when her hand brushed against something solid. It wasn't the usual coin or crumpled receipt. It felt small, square, and oddly familiar, curious. She reached inside and pulled out a tiny velvet box. Dark blue, worn at the edges, like it had been handled a lot. Her first thought was that maybe Ethan had bought a gift. A ring for someone. Maybe a girlfriend she didn't know about. She chuckled softly. A mix of surprise and motherly pride. But as she turned the box over in her palm, something strange stirred inside her. The fabric felt familiar, the weight of it too specific. She opened the lid slowly, expecting a simple band or maybe a pair of earrings instead. She saw a silver ring with a sapphire stone glinting faintly in the morning light. Her breath caught, her body froze, and for a moment the world seemed to stop moving. She recognized that ring instantly. It wasn't just any ring, it was hers. 15 years ago, her husband, Daniel, had given it to her on their 10th anniversary. She remembered how his eyes had shone when he slipped it onto her finger, saying it reminded him of the sea, calm on the surface but endless beneath. It was one of the last gifts he'd ever given her, before everything changed, before he left, and before she had to rebuild a life she never wanted to face alone. After he disappeared, the ring vanished too. She had searched for it for months, believing maybe she'd misplaced it. But deep down she always suspected it had been taken. The sight of it now, gleaming in her son's pocket, was like being pulled backward through time. The shock ran through her like a cold wind. Why did Ethan have it? How had he found it? And what did it mean? Her fingers trembled as she touched the sapphire. It was smooth, untouched, still beautiful, still painful. Memories came flooding in. Laughter in the kitchen, soft music on rainy nights, and the argument that ended everything. She felt her throat tighten as she sat down on Ethan's bed, clutching the little box like it might vanish again if she blinked. Then she noticed something else, a small folded piece of paper beneath the box, neatly tucked away. Her heart thumped faster. She opened it, expecting maybe a receipt or a note from a friend. But the handwriting stopped her. It was Ethan's. But the words were simple, written with care. To Claire, it said at the top. Laura's pulse quickened. Her chest felt tight. She whispered the name to herself as though saying it aloud might make it make sense. Claire. She hadn't heard that name in years. Claire Benson, her best friend once, her sister in everything but blood, the person who had held her hand through life's hardest moments, until Daniel left, and Claire left too. The two of them had shared everything. Laughter, secrets, tears, even dreams of their children growing up together. But then the friendship broke in silence, not with anger, but with something deeper. Betrayal. Now that name was here again, written by her son. attached to the ring that symbolized everything she had lost. Lavra stood up, pacing slowly, the questions tangled in her mind. Why would Ethan be writing to Claire? Did he know who she was? Had he found her? And why would he have her ring? The thought hit her suddenly. Maybe Claire had it all along. Maybe she had known. Maybe she had kept it all these years. The memory of Daniel's last days flashed again. The late nights. The secrets. The unexplained disappearances. Lavra had tried not to dwell on it, tried to move on for Ethan's sake. But now the past was stirring again, alive and sharp. She sat back down, staring at the letter, her hands shaking. Ethan was only 20. He wouldn't understand what this meant. He couldn't know how much history that name carried. She wanted to call him to ask, but what would she even say? Why do you have my ring? Why are you writing to Claire? No. She couldn't do that yet. She needed to breathe, to think. The house felt heavier now, like the walls were closing in. She looked around at the photos on the wall. Pictures of Ethan as a child. Daniel holding him in the park. Her own smile frozen in happier years. For a moment she wondered if maybe this was fate's way of reopening a door she thought was locked forever. She took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Ethan had found the ring somewhere. Maybe the name was a coincidence. But her heart didn't believe that. She had lived long enough to know that life rarely dealt coincidences. It dealt reminders. Lessons, second chances disguised as pain. Outside, the sun had shifted, casting golden lines across the floor. The light touched the ring, making the sapphire glow like a tiny captured sky. It was beautiful, and it hurt to look at. She remembered how Daniel had smiled when he gave it to her, how his eyes softened when he said, "For you, Lavra, because you always carry light even in the dark." She closed the box gently and placed it on Icon's desk, but she couldn't walk away. Not yet. She stared at it like it was a key to something she hadn't unlocked in years. Maybe Ethan didn't know its story. Maybe to him it was just a pretty ring, a gift he wanted to give. But to her, it was the symbol of everything she lost: love, trust, and the woman she used to be. She glanced at the note again. To Claire. The words burned into her heart. Maybe Claire's daughter, Emily, was involved. She remembered hearing that Claire had a daughter about Ethan's age. They'd been close once too, back when both families used to spend summers at the lake. Could it be that Ethan was writing to her? The idea sent a chill through her. What if her son had fallen for Claire's daughter? What if the past was repeating itself? 2 generations tied by the same kind of love that once tore families apart. Lavra pressed her hand against her chest, trying to calm her racing thoughts. It felt like fate was playing a cruel trick, bringing back names and memories she had spent years trying to forget. Yet beneath the confusion and pain, there was something else. A quiet fear. The fear that maybe her son had found happiness in a place she wasn't ready to face. She turned toward the window, watching as the light faded and shadows stretched across the floor. Her reflection in the glass looked older, sadder. She could almost see the younger version of herself behind it. The woman who had once believed love could fix anything. She whispered softly, "What are you doing?" Ethan, as if her voice could reach him miles away. The ring still glimmered faintly on the desk. A reminder that the past wasn't gone, only hidden. Waiting for the right moment to return, Lavra picked it up one last time, tracing the edge of the sapphire with her fingertip. The cool metal sent a shiver through her. She closed her eyes, feeling both the warmth of love and the sting of memory. That night she couldn't sleep. The house felt too quiet. Every shadow seemed to whisper old names. She lay awake thinking about Daniel, about Claire. and about her son, the only person who could unknowingly reopen wounds she thought had healed. When morning came, Lara made a decision. She wouldn't call Ethan yet. She needed to know the truth first. She needed to find out how the ring had returned, and why that name appeared in her son's handwriting. As she placed the box in her drawer, she whispered to herself, "Some stories never really end. They just wait." And though she didn't know it yet, the story that had once broken her heart was beginning again. Not in her hands, but in her son's. The past was no longer behind her. It was coming home. The morning after finding the ring, Lara couldn't shake the uneasiness twisting inside her. The sunlight that filled the kitchen felt harsh. Almost accusing, she poured herself a cup of coffee. But it tasted bitter. Her thoughts were tangled around one name. Claire. It had been 15 years since she last heard that name spoken in her home. And now it was written in her son's handwriting. She tried to keep herself busy, folding clothes, cleaning dishes. Anything to stop her mind from running wild. But every time she saw the velvet box on the counter, her chest tightened. The ring wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was proof that the past, no matter how far she'd run, had found her again. Lara sat down, staring at the note again. To Claire. 2 words that carried the weight of everything she never wanted to remember. She traced them with her thumb, wondering how Ethan even knew Claire. He was only a child when their friendship fell apart, too young to understand what happened. But then she remembered. Claire had moved to the next town years ago, not too far from the college Ethan attended. The realization hit her like a spark. What if Ethan had met her there, not knowing who she was? What if fate had drawn them together without any of them realizing it? Her mind drifted back to the last time she saw Claire. It was a stormy night. Daniel had been distant for weeks, and Lara had gone to Claire's house, hoping to talk. But when she arrived, Claire had looked pale, guilty, and she wouldn't meet her eyes. That night changed everything. Daniel left soon after, and Claire disappeared too, without explanation. The betrayal cut deeper than words. Not just because Lara lost her husband, but because she lost her best friend. Now, 15 years later, her son had somehow found a connection to that same woman, or worse. To her daughter, Laura's thoughts spun faster. Could Ethan be in love with Claire's daughter? Emily. She remembered the girl. Quiet, kind, always following Ethan around when they were little. It had been innocent then, but now they were adults, old enough to feel things that could break them. Lara picked up her phone, her thumb hovering over Ethan's number. She wanted to ask, to demand the truth. But what if she was wrong? What if confronting him only pushed him away? He had finally started opening up about his life at college, talking about someone special, someone he called the one person who makes me feel understood. She had smiled then, happy for him, but now the words felt heavy with new meaning. She put the phone down and walked to the window, watching the street outside. The world looked normal. People walking their dogs, cars passing by, children laughing, but inside, everything felt like it was shifting. She realized she was afraid, not of the truth, but of reliving the pain she had buried so deep. That evening, she opened her laptop and searched Ethan's college town. Her heart raced as she typed, Claire Benson. She didn't know what she expected. Maybe a business listing. Maybe nothing. But there it was, a local art studio. Claire Benson Designs. The photo on the website showed Claire. Older now, her smile softer but still familiar. The sight made Laura's stomach drop. She hadn't changed much, still graceful, still radiant in a quiet way, Lavra stared at the picture for a long time, remembering laughter over coffee, shared secrets, promises that had meant everything. The memories ached. But beneath that ache was curiosity. A need to know how Claire had ended up with her ring, and why her son was writing to her. She scrolled further and froze when she saw another picture. Claire and her daughter, Emily Benson, standing side by side. Emily looked almost exactly like Claire at that age. Warm eyes, kind smile, something open and genuine in her expression. And then Laura understood. Ethan hadn't written to Claire. He had written to Emily. The name on the note wasn't about her past. It was about his present. A mix of relief and worry filled her chest. Relief that Ethan wasn't involved with the woman who had once broken her world. But worry because life had just brought the two families together again. The universe had a strange sense of humor. Two generations caught in the same circle. Lavra leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling, trying to process it all. It was almost poetic, the way fate worked. She thought she had escaped her past, but now it was tied to her son's future. Over the next few days, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She imagined Ethan and Emily together, laughing, holding hands, maybe even talking about love. The thought filled her with both pride and fear. Ethan deserved happiness, but what if history repeated itself? What if pain found them the way it once found her? She found herself standing outside Ethan's old room again. The ring still sitting on the desk where she had left it. The sapphire sparkled faintly under the soft light. She picked it up and held it close, remembering Daniel's voice. Some things find their way back to where they belong, he had said once, back when love still felt simple. She wondered now if the ring's return meant something, a message from the past, or just a coincidence too powerful to ignore. That night, Lavra decided to call Ethan. Her voice was calm, though her heart was racing. When he answered, he sounded happy, light. She hadn't heard that tone in his voice for years. "Hey, Mom," he said. "I was just thinking about you." They talked for a few minutes about classes, work, and everyday things. She listened carefully, waiting for a pause, then asked gently, "Ethan, who's Claire?" There was silence on the line. A small pause that stretched too long. Then he laughed nervously. "Oh, Claire. You mean Emily's mom?" Her chest tightened. She tried to keep her voice steady. "Emily," she said, pretending she didn't already know. "You mentioned her before." "Yeah," he said softly. And Lavra could hear the warmth in his tone. "She's amazing, Mom. I think you'd really like her." Lavra smiled faintly, but her heart ached. She remembered being that young, that in love, believing that love was enough to fix anything. She wanted to protect him, to warn him that love could heal, but also destroy. But she couldn't take that from him. They talked a little longer before saying goodbye, and after she hung up, Lavra sat in silence, her fingers brushing over the ring again. Ethan had said Emily's mother, Claire, was kind, that she owned a small art studio near campus. That meant he had met her, maybe even spent time with her. The idea of her son sitting across from Claire, the woman who once shattered her world, made her chest tighten with old pain. But more than anger, she felt something else. Sadness. Maybe Claire wasn't the villain she'd painted in her mind all these years. Maybe both of them had been broken by the same man. The same choices. The same silence that tore them apart. Lavra found herself wondering if Claire still remembered her. If she ever thought about that night, or about the friendship they once had. Maybe time had softened the edges of what happened. Maybe forgiveness was possible. Days passed. But Lavra couldn't stop thinking about it. She started looking at old photos. Ones she hadn't touched in years. Pictures of her, Daniel, Claire, and their children. Two families smiling in summer light, unaware of the storm that would one day separate them. She found one photo that stopped her cold. It was taken at the lake. Claire and Daniel laughing while she and Ethan built sandcastles with Emily. For a moment she saw it differently, not as betrayal, but as a memory of people trying to love, trying to find happiness. Maybe everyone had their own truth, their own side of the story. That evening, Lara made up her mind. She would visit the art studio, not to confront, but to understand. If her son's heart was tied to Emily's, she needed to know the woman who raised her. She needed to face the past, not for revenge, but for peace. She dressed simply, nothing fancy, and drove quietly through the familiar roads that led to Claire's town. Her hands tightened on the wheel as memories resurfaced. The closer she got, the louder her heartbeat became when she arrived. The little art studio stood on a quiet corner, sunlight spilling across its glass windows inside. Paintings filled the walls, gentle colors, soft light, a feeling of calm. And there she was, Claire, standing behind the counter, older now, but still beautiful in that quiet, graceful way. Laura's breath caught. For a moment she considered turning around, walking away, but she didn't. She stepped inside, the little bell above the door chiming softly. Claire looked up, and their eyes met for the first time in 15 years. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. The air between them was heavy with unspoken memories, regret, and something close to relief. And in that silence, Lara realized that the truth she'd been afraid to face wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about understanding, about the way love, no matter how painful, always finds its way back into our lives. The story wasn't over, not yet. The past had returned. But this time, it came with a chance to heal. The bell above the studio door rang softly, and for a moment the sound seemed to freeze time. Claire looked up from behind the counter, her brush still in hand, her expression calm but curious. Then she saw Laura, and the color drained from her face. The brush slipped from her fingers and rolled across the floor. The two women stood there, motionless, the years between them thick like fog. Laura didn't know what she expected. Anger, tears, maybe even denial. But what she saw in Claire's eyes was something different. Something fragile. A quiet sadness mixed with recognition. Neither spoke, and yet everything they'd left unsaid hung between them. Finally, Lara took a step forward, her voice soft but steady. "It's been a long time," she said. Claire nodded, her lips trembling slightly. 15 years, she whispered. The air felt heavy, as though both were afraid to breathe too deeply and break the fragile peace that had unexpectedly settled between them. "I didn't come here to fight," Lara said quickly, sensing Claire's unease. "I came because I found something." She reached into her bag and pulled out the small velvet box. Setting it gently on the counter, Claire's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. "You still have it?" She breathed. Laura studied her face, the shock, the emotion. "It was in my son's pocket," she said. "I think it belongs to me, but I don't understand how it ended up there." Claire hesitated, then looked away. "I was going to give it back to you," she said quietly. "I found it years ago, in the box Daniel left behind. I didn't know how to reach you." The name struck the air like thunder. Daniel, the man who connected them both. The man who once loved one and left the other broken. Laura's pulse quickened. "You had his things," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. Claire nodded slowly. "After he left, he came to see me once." Laura's breath caught, her heart pounding. He came to see you, she repeated. Why? Claire's eyes filled with tears. Not for what you think, she said quickly. He was lost, Lara. He'd made mistakes and didn't know how to face you. He asked me to give you something. A letter. That ring. But before I could, he was gone. I kept it all these years, thinking one day I'd find the courage to tell you. The words hit Laura like a wave. All the years of pain, confusion, and unanswered questions rushing back at once. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice cracking. You could have called. You could have said something. Claire shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. I was ashamed. I thought you'd never forgive me. For a long moment there was silence, only the faint sound of the rain beginning to fall outside. Lara looked at her old friend. Older now, her hair streaked with grey, her eyes tired but honest, and something in her heart began to soften. Ethan, Lara said finally. He's seen your daughter, isn't he? Claire blinked in surprise, then gave a small, tearful smile. Yes, I know, Emily told me. She didn't realize you were his mother until recently. She was scared to tell either of us. Laura let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He loves her, she said quietly. He told me, and I can hear it in his voice. Claire nodded, wiping her tears. Emily loves him too, she said. She says he makes her feel safe, like she can trust again. Both women stood there, realizing what fate had done. Two broken pasts crossing paths through their children's love. The irony was almost cruel, yet somehow it also felt like healing. Lara smiled faintly. Maybe they're giving us a second chance, she said. Not to go back, but to understand. Claire looked down at the ring, still sitting between them. This was supposed to be a promise, she said softly. Maybe now it can mean forgiveness. Lara picked it up, feeling the cool metal against her skin. And for the first time in years, the ring didn't hurt to hold. It felt lighter somehow. Like the pain that clung to it had finally faded. She nodded slowly. Maybe it can. The two women talked for a long time, about Daniel, about the choices they'd made, and about the years they'd lost. They didn't try to rewrite the past, only to understand it. When Lara finally stood to leave, the tension that once surrounded them had melted away. Outside, the rain had turned gentle, brushing against the sidewalk in soft rhythms. Lara stood under the awning, taking a deep breath. It felt like the first real breath she'd taken in years. When she returned home, she found Ethan waiting for her. He had arrived earlier than expected, his bag still by the door. Hey, Mum, he said, smiling. I thought I'd surprise you. Lara felt her heart swell just seeing him. She tried to smile, but emotion caught in her throat. You did, she said softly. You always do. They sat together at the kitchen table, and after a few moments of silence, she placed the ring in front of him. You left this behind, she said gently. Ethan froze, his expression shifting from confusion to guilt. Oh, he said, his voice quiet. I didn't mean for you to find that. I know, she said, but I did. He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. I was going to give it to Emily, he admitted. I found it behind her house last summer, near the old fence. I didn't know it was yours. I just thought it was beautiful. It felt right to give it to her. Laura's heart softened. She reached out, touching his hand. It was mine, she said. And before that, it belonged to your father. Ethan looked up, startled. Dad's. She nodded. He gave it to me once, a long time ago. Her voice was gentle. No anger left in it, only memory. Life has a way of bringing things back when we least expect it. Ethan's eyes filled with emotion. Mum, if it hurts you, I won't give it to her, Lavra smiled, shaking her head. No, Ethan, you should. It's time the ring meant something good again. He hesitated, then nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. Thank you, he whispered. They sat there in quiet understanding, no need for more words. The ring that once symbolized heartbreak was now a bridge between two generations. Later that night, when Ethan went out to meet Emily, Lavra watched from the porch as he walked down the street. The rain had stopped, and the world smelled fresh, new. The moonlight shimmered against the wet pavement, and for a moment, she could almost see Daniel standing beside her, not as the man who left, but as the man who once loved her deeply. She closed her eyes and whispered, "We did all right, didn't we?" Somewhere deep inside, she felt peace, the kind that doesn't erase pain but accepts it. A week later, Ethan brought Emily home to meet her. Lavra had prepared herself, but when she saw the young woman walk through the door, her heart skipped. Emily had her mother's eyes, warm and gentle. For a split second, Lavra saw the past, two little children playing by the lake, and then she saw the future. Standing before her, Emily smiled nervously. "Mrs. Parker, I've heard so much about you." Lavra returned the smile. "And I about you," she said softly. "Call me Lavra." Ethan squeezed Emily's hand, his eyes bright with happiness. And Lavra saw something pure there, something she hadn't seen in years. Hope. They talked for hours, laughter filling the house again. When Ethan finally gave Emily the ring, Lavra felt tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the beauty of the moment. The sapphire caught the light, shining brighter than it ever had. After they left, Lavra stood at the window, watching them walk hand in hand down the street. The scene felt poetic, the past and future walking side by side. She turned off the lights and sat quietly, thinking of Claire, of Daniel, of everything that had once been broken but now felt whole again. The next morning, she received a small envelope in the mail. There was no return address, only her name. Inside was a letter, short, written in familiar handwriting. "Lavra, thank you for coming. I didn't have the courage to say everything, but seeing you brought peace I didn't know I needed. I hope our children find the happiness we lost. Maybe that's how we forgive ourselves, by letting love continue. Claire." Lavra smiled through her tears, folding the letter carefully and placing it beside her coffee cup. She looked out the window, where sunlight streamed in, warm and soft. The world outside seemed brighter, quieter, kinder. She whispered to herself, "Maybe love doesn't end, it just changes where it lives." The ring had traveled through loss, through time, through generations, carrying with it all the pain, love, and forgiveness of those who once held it. Now, in her son's hands, it no longer belonged to the past. It belonged to the future, to new hearts learning what love really means. Not perfection, but persistence. And as Lavra sat in the morning light, she finally understood. What she saw in her son's pants that day wasn't a ring or a secret. It was a reminder that love, no matter how broken, always finds a way home.